World Trade Organization has acknowledged Nigeria's nomination of Dr. Okonjo-Iweala for the position of Director General. In a statement, the World Trade Organization says Nigeria on 9 June 2020 nominated Dr. Okonjo-Iweala for the post of Director General to succeed the Director General, the current Director General, Mr. Roberto Azevedo, who has announced that he will step down on the 31st of August 2020. The election of a 4-year term is scheduled to hold in Geneva, Switzerland in 2021. Tundun, your take on this morning. At first, Egypt has kicked against this. Why? Because we had somebody, in fact, the Deputy Director General, as a Nigerian, that put himself forward for nominations at first before the president now said, okay, it's going to be Okonjo-Iweala. And Egypt kicked against it because of this. But it looks as though the World Trade Organization has finally accepted our nomination. What's your take on this?
I think that acceptance of her nomination is a really good sign that she will eventually clinch the job, or at least I hope so. No weapon fashioned against her will prosper. We have to pray for our own, yes. But I think the World Trade Organization understands that they are at a particularly precarious point in their history. I mean, with the global trade war between the U.S. and China, because it can never be between the U.S. and China. It involves the whole world, that trade war. COVID-19 pandemic, which is caused social and economic disruptions like we have never seen. The WTO needs somebody of NOI's, abilities at this point. So I think it's a really great step in the right direction.
It looks she's already up ahead on the table as we speak now, as regards Dr. Abati.
First, congratulations to Nigeria and congratulations to Dr. Okonjo-Iweala. She's not been made the Director General yet,
yes,
but at least this is a very important development with regard to our nomination by Nigeria. The ambassador that was withdrawn from the race is Ambassador Frederick Aga. And now clearly Egypt is wrong. Egypt may have been acting out of self-interest because they also have a candidate that they are proposing, who is an academic in the United Kingdom. And they got the facts right. Egypt's position was that the signal for the nomination of successors had been announced in November 2019. But I recall that it was on May 2020 that Roberto Azevedo said he had no plans to complete his tenure. He was supposed to complete it in 2021. And on that occasion, the chairman of the Board of Governors of the WTO responded and announced that, very soon the WTO will commence a succession program, which they now did, asking for nominations with effect from about June 8th. And when we first discussed this, I said, Nigeria acted quickly because we didn't even wait till June 8th when we announced Okonjo-Iweala's nomination. And then at the end of and that nomination of all candidates is supposed to expire by July 8th. And then the board will sit, interview the candidates, they will take questions, and by consensus, the board would choose the next Director General of the WTO. So I don't know what game Egypt is playing, and clearly WTO has shown that Nigeria acted rightly.
Okay.
Now, what does WTO need? Does it need a savior? Does it need a survivor? Because you can have two kinds of persons. Azevedo himself, I think, stepped down because of the major challenges ahead. So, as Tundun pointed out, there is the issue of China and U.S. to deal with. There's also the post-COVID reality and the implications for global trade. And then there are unresolved matters like the Doha round and other issues that the WTO has not been able to address.
But a lot of people are quickly kicking against Nigeria in the sense that we don't even have a trade policy, a working trade policy, and other ancillary documents. Is it not just going to act against us as regards international trade?
Well, this is about leadership. Nigeria has been a member of the WTO since it was founded. We are an original member of that body.
Okay.
And I guess that at the end of the day, in Africa, it shouldn't be difficult, for Nigeria as a bona fide member of that body to aspire or to clinch the leadership of that body. And, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala clearly has, from the CVs that I have seen so far of the various, intending candidates, a much more robust experience and pedigree in terms of exposure. and the intellectual heft.
Yeah,
which
and you're
is also
completely
very,
right.
very
But you
strong
need a
control.
wheeler dealer. You need somebody who can strike deals and smooth ruffled feathers, and she can do that.
And she does that so well. She enters the corporate sector like knife through hot butter.
Exactly.
And she goes into the public sector in a very tremendous way. She's currently on the board of Twitter. She's also chair for Gavi, Global Vaccine Initiative, doing a lot of work now as regards coronavirus
The
vaccine.
Economic Forum, South Africa.
Doing quite well.
And she's also on the advisory board of,
All right.
IMF.
I understand we have another quick story. Okay, we'll moving on now. We'll go for business update. Michael Wilson will join us from London, and we'll also have other updates as regards business. We'll take a quick short break, and when we return, Global Business Update continues with Michael Wilson. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our most dependable Rotus Odiri now joins us to give us Africa Business Update. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning.
Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Tundun. Good morning, Rufai.
Morning, Rotus.
Yeah. Good morning. So you were just talking a few minutes ago about the World Trade Organization and also Nigeria's trade policy. So we can continue the conversation with the National Bureau of Statistics trade data for the first quarter of 2020. This is for Nigeria. So we essentially posted a trade deficit. We've had a quarter-on-quarter trade deficit with regards to our exports versus our imports. Total foreign trade for Nigeria Q1 was down by 17.94% compared to the fourth quarter of 2019. We posted 8.3 trillion naira. In the fourth quarter of 2019, we posted 10.12 trillion. So it was down 17%. However, year on year, if we compare this first quarter of 2020 to the first quarter of 2019, it was a marginal 0.8% increase. So last year, we posted an 8.23 trillion naira in trade in the first quarter. Of the total trade, imports made up 4.2 trillion, about 50% of it. Exports made up 4.08 trillion, about 49%. So we posted a trade deficit of to the tune of 138 billion naira. We've now had a consecutive quarter-on-quarter trade deficits where our imports exceed our exports. And this has implications with regards to our foreign exchange and the pressures on the central bank. Crude oil, out of the exports of 4.08 trillion naira, crude oil made up 2.9 trillion, about 75%. So the bulk of our exports is the same old story. It's been crude exports that we've made. That's 72.2%. And then only 2 African countries among our top 10 trading partners were among our top 10 trading partners. So if we take a look at our export and import trading partners, China was our top import trading partner, 26% of trade that came in. The Netherlands was second at 11.1%. The United States was third. India was fourth, and Belgium was fifth. This is for our imports. Now, with regards to our exports, India led the way. Also, Spain was in second place. The Netherlands was in third place. And then these are the 2 African countries, South Africa and Cameroon. This now it bolsters the point for the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to kick off so we can see Nigeria trading with more African countries. Cameroon only just made it here. I mean, the last quarter, it's been only South Africa that's been our major African trading partner with regards to the top 5 for a number of years. So it's only Cameroon is only just popping here for this quarter now. So that's what we're seeing with trade. With regards to the border closures, with regards to looking inwards, we still have a long way to go. Nigeria has to boost our infrastructure in order for us to expand our trade and be able to post bigger exports than imports so we can see a trade surplus. Moving on from this now to MTN. MTN posted one of the largest commercial paper issuances in Nigeria's history. The other big company that has done it to this tune of 100 billion is Dangote Cement. So a commercial paper is a money market security. It matures in under a year. MTN issued a Series 1 and 2 commercial paper. The Series 1, 20 billion, 180-day tenure, a yield of 4.9%. The Series 2, 80 billion, 270-day tenure, yield of 5.9%. Ferdinand Muman, the CEO, said the commercial paper was 400% oversubscribed, meaning that way more money came in after this 100 billion than what was offered. But they could only, of course, issue 100 billion. What are they going to use the money for? They're going to be using it for working capital, broadening their funding base. This is their first approach to the capital market. Yesterday, I talked about Ghana wanting to reduce MTN's dominance in the telco sector. I didn't get to share this chart yesterday, but out of 140 million subscribers, this is looking at Ghana's Q1 2020 mobile data subscription. MTN has like 50%, followed by Vodafone at 30%, Airtel Tigo at 18%, and Glo at 2%. So this is part of the reason why the Ghanaians are trying to make the telco sector a level playing field. But good luck to them because they are really dominant. And then our next topic, we're going to be looking at Zimbabwe and the fact that Zimbabwe got a lifeline from the World Bank to the tune of $7 million for them to fight COVID-19. Zimbabwe, I think Eritrea and Sudan are three countries that are in the red and are owing money to the IMF, the World Bank. So they didn't qualify for funds, but I guess out of the goodness of their hearts, the World Bank said they will have to assist them. Jim Rich, who is a U.S. Senator on the Foreign Relations Committee, he wrote a letter to the World Bank saying that the World Bank has to take extra precaution to make sure that the $7 million they're giving to Zimbabwe is used for COVID-19 because, quote, in his letter, the country is known for suppressing its people and also for diverting money to the ruling elite. So he wrote that letter to David Malpass, who is the president of the World Bank, and said that they need to watch that money carefully. And that is pretty much our African business update.
Well, Rotus, the fact that imports exceeded exports, I think that's something that will have a serious implication for the foreign reserve of Nigeria. But it will be interesting to see what the trade balance looks like after COVID-19, post-COVID-19. And the point you made about the trading in Africa, what that means, of course, is that you know the implication of that. Most African countries do not really trade. We tend to trade more with the international community than trade within Africa. But clearly, it will be interesting to see whether this negative trade balance is sustained, in the second quarter. And I guess that is predictable, considering the impact of COVID-19.
Yes, indeed. And
what I have to say to that is just roll on Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Yes,
we need it desperately. That has fallen to the back burner because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Correct.
But we do need to raise that. And regarding Zimbabwe, isn't it just so mortifying? The same way with the Abacha loot house, we're always been told somebody's going to pilfer the money. We have to really work on corruption in Africa.
We do.
All right, Rotus, we have to thank you and go to Wilson now.
Right,
I apologize, but I had more things to still talk about as regards non-oil export. We'll talk about that tomorrow. All right, moving on back to more business update. Michael Wilson joins us from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Morning.
It's taking a breather, really. Stock markets ran scared yesterday after that World Bank warning that we covered yesterday, that the global economy might contract not by 3%, but now by 5.2% this year. And if that is correct, then, as you noted yesterday, and we both did, that would be the largest contraction since the 1940s. And for a few days, we have also noted, haven't we, that the stock markets have not been paying an enormous amount of attention to what's really happening in the world. Well, they certainly did yesterday. But again, a fallback or a breather. I mean, it depends whether your pot is half full or half empty, quite honestly. I think it's probably a breather, but that isn't to say that the future actually holds anything right now. As Wall Street was concerned, though, here we go again. NASDAQ closed up over 0.6% last night. And at one point, it traded above the 10,000 level for the first time. Traditional industries struggling, but it's the tech industries which are reaping the benefits of this pandemic. Certainly open for business. Technology already becoming part of our everyday life before the pandemic. Now it most certainly is, and people actually are looking at that as a very, very important investment shift as far as their assets are concerned. In the past couple of months, the government's been easing up. Governments have all over been easing up on lockdown rules. So we hope really that something will happen as far as economies are concerned. Some figures out from China. These are the latest CPI and PPI numbers, CPI being their inflation rate. Economists are expecting 2.7%. It was actually slightly lower than that. Now, you may think that inflation is a bad thing, and many European countries have been hating inflation for many, many years. It's not a bad thing because it does actually make your debts cheaper, and inflation tends to sort of imply there's some kind of economic activity taking place. So therefore, sentiment slightly mixed as far as the Asian markets are concerned. And it's expected that when Europe really gets back to business today in terms of trading, which it's been doing for some 27 minutes right now, we should be recouping some of yesterday's losses. Here's one for you. Let's continue with Huawei, if we may, whilst we were talking about China. Vodafone in this country has been warning that stripping Huawei out of the UK technical systems will mean that the country will lose the lead in 5G. As I told you last week, the UK has been talking to other large companies like NEC and so on to try to make sure that any loss of Huawei didn't affect our internet systems too much. I think this will be a debate that everyone in the world will be having right now. Depends what you feel about Huawei. I mean, do you really think that there's a conspiracy theory based in truth, which says that they're part of the Chinese government? Do you actually worry what Google and Facebook does with the information that you give them? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Anyway, that's that. So we'll put that on the back burner for the moment. Aviva, which is a huge fund manager here and is internationally, has criticised HSBC. You remember last week we were seeing that they were sort of supporting the new Chinese security law in Hong Kong. They have been walking a very delicate geopolitical tightrope for many, many years. Their careful neutrality, according to some critics, is now over. You can see why. 2.7 trillion in assets, 235,000 employees in 64 countries, 90% of their income, their pre-tax profits, comes from Asia. So you can see why they're unwilling to be too unfriendly to Asia. Just before you go to the break, let me just talk about oil briefly, and I'll come back with a couple of others if you'd like to join me again. It lost ground yesterday on those World Bank forecasts, but remember that the EIA report, this is the one that comes out monthly, will be posted at 3:30 your time. Just after the Global Business Report, I think, finishes anyway. Inventories are expected to fall by 1.9 million barrels. Again, no bad thing, because that means that some kind of activity is taking place. And WTI and Brent hit their highest levels on Friday. So even if there's a slight variation there is an underlying feeling that the oil price is gradually rising. Metals mixed yesterday. Platinum and palladium moved lower. Copper sent a 3-month high. And as you know, I like Dr. Copper. Dr. Copper
Mr.
is
Wilson,
a very good indicator.
Please hold your thoughts, and we'll take a short break and be back with more with you. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. We're still with Michael Wilson with a global business update from London. Mr. Wilson, as you were saying.
Yeah, just to reiterate, so the market's having a bit of a pause, maybe taking a bit of a breather. All eyes really on the Fed now, the American Central Bank, which is having its monthly meeting, interest rate decision. That'll be announced about 7 o'clock. This is 7 o'clock your time and our time. No, this evening, no real change expected, but it'll be interesting to see what the chairman of the Fed actually says afterwards. And policy makers, I think, will probably agree, yes, the Fed will do what it can to try to protect the economy. But the most important thing is the health of the economy and the health of the nation. And until they've actually confirmed there won't be a second spike, or indeed if there is, that doesn't keep people indoors, then they will feel as though the economy is heading in the right direction. I have to say, I think it's far too early to say those kind of things, but there we are. Let's see what they have to say. As far as the UK is concerned, very pleased to announce that non-essential shops will be open on Monday. I can go to a zoo or a theme park, if I like. But if I had young children, which I don't because I've all grown up, they can't go back to school yet. How crazy is that? The EU, here's a good one, is announcing a thing called a bad bank. Now, if you are a student of what happened during the financial crash in 2008, the banks were caught completely unaware, and they have this dustbin, basically, for bad debt that they put them all in. Sounds easy, doesn't it? I bet they're probably still there as far as we know. Anyway, the European Union, the European Commission, the European Union is actually European Central Bank, is actually drawing up plans for another bad bank because they feel as though there will be many, many billions of euro loans that will go bad because of the pandemic. When will it all be paid off? That is the big question. It'll take France, finally, it'll take till 2022 for France to recover from all this. I mention it because their government is losing no time whatsoever in pushing money into some of their threatened industries, 15 billion euro into the country's aerospace industry and also support for Air France. Airlines will lose 84 billion around the world in dollars as a result of the pandemic. But this is a very interesting story. This is a developing one. What's actually happening with some of these countries that are taking the pandemic as an excuse to push money into strategic industries? And we'll see a lot of that. And this is strictly something which is not supposed to happen within the European Union.
Well, Michael, I'd like to take you back to what you said about Aviva and HSBC and Standard Chartered. We've seen the backlash now from an investor, a major shareholder in those two institutions. We've also seen the backlash from politicians, particularly in the UK and the US. Do you think that there could be the possibility of a customer backlash?
There might well be, but you have to, it is 64 countries as far as HSBC is concerned. And I think it's probably pretty fair to say, you make a very good point. I think it's fair to say, though, that actually the opinion about that will be very much divided. And China is actually saying, or did say last week, if you don't want to be there, then we'll find somebody to replace you. Now, I don't think that they will. I think that would be very, very difficult indeed, because Hong Kong is a very, very special gateway to a communist country, which is what China basically is. So I think that there would be a long way to go before that happens. But you're seeing something, this considered neutrality. HSBC's slogan for years, if you remember, was always, "We are a guest." In so many countries. Well, that's all beginning to change slightly, and they're having to align themselves with something which a lot of people find rather unpleasant. I think this has got a long way to go. It'd be interesting to see what the customers think. Okay, generally speaking, I don't know what it's like with you, but here, people suffer from inertia as far as banks are concerned, and they just keep going as they ever do.
All right, Michael, we'd like to say a very big thank you to you. We'll go for more update on COVID-19 pandemic. Aaron is joining us. I'm sure he's here with us now. Aaron, what's happening around the world as regards COVID-19, Aaron?
Yeah,
take it away.
First of all, before I get into that, a very good morning to you, Rufai. Good morning to you, Doctor, and a special good morning to you, Tundun.
Tundun zone has to be special, right?
Aaron, please take care.
All right.
I wouldn't say more.
All right,
Aaron, get on with your update.
Okay, straight into the update. Let's start it off. Let's pick it up from where something we touched on yesterday. We spoke about the fact that the WHO gave a stance regarding transmission of the coronavirus, of which they have retracted that statement. Of course, Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove yesterday said that those who were asymptomatic rarely transmit this COVID-19, and it has received worldwide backlash and criticism, and they've come to reverse this statement. In her own words, right now she's now actually saying that we don't actually even have the answers to some of these questions yet, because it's still a novel virus and they're still studying it at the moment. And as it stands, report still says by experts or those who are actually in the field, because we can't call anyone an expert right now, understanding that it's still a novel virus. Reports from scientists in this field are saying that 40 to 60% of the transmission of COVID-19 is still from asymptomatic patients. Now, this must be differentiated from pre-symptomatic patients. Asymptomatic are those who don't show signs and will never show signs of the virus, as against pre-symptomatic patients who will at some point show signs of COVID-19. So they are being clear that at the moment, people still have to be careful. People still need to follow all the guidelines, like wearing your face mask, keep 2 meters, wash your hands as much as possible, use hand sanitizers. But the WHO, once again, have found themselves chasing issues, major issues like this, when they're supposed to be ahead of key issues like this.
Yesterday that advice was completely counterintuitive, and you don't need to be a scientist to have common sense. It just did not make sense. Yeah. So I'm not surprised that she had to withdraw this, qualify it and say it was just a very small test, but it is rather embarrassing. There's a bit of egg on WHO's face right now.
Once again.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, actually moving on, let's actually spread our tentacles to seeing what is happening. And let's tell you that Mumbai right now are actually experiencing another spike. Close to about 10,000 patients have actually been tested to and found positive of COVID-19. You can actually see the numbers there, 9,987. It is gradually rising, and it's been on the rise throughout the month of June, and we're just on the 9th day. You can actually see that from 8,000, 9,000, and it's just been growing. And Mumbai is not just even, the spike is heavily in Mumbai, but of course Maharashtra, which has 114 million population, also is having a spike, but they are not experiencing this sharp of a spike as much as Mumbai is experiencing at the moment, and it has got the world and WHO worried about what is going on. In a population of about 18 million people, it's not it is a capital, but not the largest city in India, and they're seeing this much spike there. When you put it side by side with what reports are actually saying in Iran about COVID-19, and health experts there in Iran, even though we're seeing the death toll at the moment over 50,000, health experts are saying that 1 in every 5 persons in Iran at some point had COVID-19, and they feared it was as deadly as possible. But looking at that particular statistics, it has actually shown that it is not as deadly as a lot of countries have painted COVID-19. So they are saying that if 1 in 5 people at some point in time had COVID-19, it's not as deadly as possible. So you look at all of this and put it side by side. But before I come to you guys there, one worrying piece of information that is actually coming out right now is what has happened in China. China's role in this COVID-19, they say that satellite images and pictures that actually showed that from August, there were a lot of activities in hospitals and several key health centers that showed that this coronavirus had already been detected in China as early as August of last year, and China did not or failed to disclose this, although China refuted this claim. But satellite images and some pictures coming up from China claim that the influx of people into hospitals in Wuhan show that it points to the fact, and evidence shows that there were coronavirus patients rather in Wuhan as at August of last year.
I mean, that's quite very possible, because even if you look at a certain case, I think it was in France, they said the case happened around December in France, that somebody had even tested positive. Somebody was sick around that period, and it was said to be COVID as at December last year in France. So I think this will only bring to bear what America has constantly been saying, that China has not been honest and true to the world as regards COVID-19.
Well, but in any case, China denies it, and some scientists have said that, look, there is no concrete evidence as to when exactly the virus started. So one way or the other, there may be some truth on both sides. However, you cited the example of Mumbai in India. But the truth of the matter is that across the world, we're beginning to see signs of a second wave, particularly in the United States, where 20 states are beginning to report a very serious spike in the number of infections, particularly in California and Arizona. And in Argentina's numbers topped over 1,000 in 24 hours yesterday. So you see Latin America more or less becoming now the new epicenter with Brazil, Argentina, Venezuela, and Mexico reporting very high numbers of infections. And by the way, in Brazil, someone went to court, and the court ruled that the national website on COVID-19 should be restored. And I think that that has been done. But in Nigeria also, we should be concerned. Yesterday, overnight, we recorded, let's say in 24 hours, we recorded 663 cases.
Yes, we did.
And that's the highest so far since February 27, and since May 30, when we recorded 583 cases. But the NCDC is saying that that's because we have increased testing, which is now close to about 80,000. But if we test more and we have more laboratories, we now have 33, we should still be expecting very high numbers in Nigeria. And I hope that we will not reach the 1,000 mark that Argentina reached yesterday.
We're hoping not. We're hoping not.
But what's the news from Africa?
Looking at it in Africa, of course, without a doubt, South Africa is still the most infected with COVID-19. But looking at the global Africa outlook, we are inching closer to 200,000 in number of confirmed cases of COVID-19, 197,313 at the moment, with deaths of 5,357. And they can actually see the statistic on the right there. The Southern Africa, which with per capita, when looking at the population per capita, certainly they are still taking the cake, although Northern Africa has more cases than South Africa.
Thank you very much, Aaron. That's all we'll be able to take.